Good morning, children. Today we are starting with a new chapter in English, and the name of the chapter is The Little Girl. And the writer of this chapter is Katherine Mansfield. Now, Katherine Mansfield Bouchon was a prominent short story writer. She was born and brought up in New Zealand and wrote under the pen name of Katherine Mansfield. When she was 19 years old, Katherine shifted to Britain. Though she did not live very long, she was just 34 when she died of tuberculosis. Most of her important work and well-known work, it was written in the later part of her life and was unpublished even at the time of her death. The story that we learn today, The Little Girl, is one of the stories that she had written in a collection. Now, the story that we are about to learn, The Little Girl, the theme of this story is family relationships. It is taken from one of the collections that were written by Mansfield, Something Childish and Other Stories. And in this story, the narration is done by a third person, and the third person is an unnamed person, unnamed narrator. Now, the story revolves around a girl by the name of Kezia. Now, Kezia is a little girl, and she is a person who is close only with her grandmother. Both her parents, her mother and her father, being a little distant from her, she is closer to her grandmother and is mainly brought up by her. Her father especially is portrayed as a very busy man, always lost in his business, and thereby he has got no time for his family. He's a very disciplined and domineering personality, and is especially strict towards Kezia. And his strictness is toward, to the end of, almost to the extent of harshness. He never displays any sort of soft feelings for his daughter. He is so domineering. He is so disciplined and strict. He doesn't, ever pet her, make her play with, with him, or, in any sort, be a little sweet towards the girl. He's always shown as a very strict and a domineering personality. Now, because of this, she develops a strong dislike for her father. She becomes, distant and starts disliking the father. And it is to the extent that she starts even avoiding her father. She feels very relieved when her father leaves for work. And that is why whenever he goes out of the house, when he just casually kisses her and leaves for her business or her profession, she feels very relieved and happy, because his presence in the house somehow intimidates the little girl, and that is why she feels quite relieved when he goes out of the house. In the evening, when he returns home, Kezia hears him asking for tea and for the newspaper, giving instructions, and that too in a very loud voice, And because of that, the entire household rushes around to his bidding. And in the process, Kezia's mother asks her to take off her father's shoes. The girl is so terrified of her father that, much to his annoyance, she starts stuttering and stammering while answering his very casual questions or queries. Interestingly, Kezia's speech is absolutely normal when she talks to other people. It is only the strictness of her father that makes her stutter because she is so intimidated by his presence. And that is why she cannot bring herself to speak properly in his presence. To her father, to Kezia rather, her father is a very tall man of few words. He seems to be a giant to her, with big hands, a big neck, and a big mouth, which is somehow intimidating. She is scared of the father. Kezia's grandmother tries to make efforts to improve Kezia's relationship with her parents. And she does that by telling her to talk nicely to them when they're relaxing, especially on Sunday afternoons. But somehow little Kezia, she always finds her mother absorbed in reading the newspaper and her father sleeping on the sofa in the drawing room. As he sleeps there, Kezia sits on a stool on a table and waits for him to wake up, looking at him, wide-eyed in her fear, until he wakes up, stretches, and asks the time. Then he looks at her, saying in an irritated tone, "Don't stare so, Kezia. You look like a little brown owl." So when he says such things to Kezia, she feels more scared. She is more intimidated by her father because he does that in a very strict manner, in a very stern fashion. So all in all the activities and the domineering personality of the father somehow scares Kezia to the extent that she just cozies up to her grandmother. She doesn't feel very comfortable in the presence of her parents. With her grandmother, she is very comfy. She is very, relaxed. So she likes to spend most of her time with her grandmother. Now, one day when Kezia is unwell and she is kept at home, Kezia's grandmother suggests that she should make a pincushion because her father's birthday is round the corner. So she asks Kezia to prepare a pincushion that can be presented to her father on his birthday. Now Kezia is quite thrilled with this idea, and she feels that probably when she presents him with such a pincushion, the father would be elated and probably he would hug her and kiss her and portray some sort of affectionate feelings towards her. So what she does is she tells her grandmother, "Okay, Granny, I would do that. But how do I do it?" So the grandmother presents her with a yellow silk cloth. And she asks her to stitch it on 3 sides. And then she tells her to fill it up with something. And lo and behold, the pincushion would be ready. Now, Kezia stitches it very properly, but she is unable to find something to stuff it in that pincushion. And she looks for her grandmother, who by this time has gone to the garden, so she is not able to find her. She, in the meantime, ventures into the room of her parents, of her father and mother. Now what happens is, there she finds a stack of very fine paper that is kept by the bedside. So what she thinks is, wow, this is a good thing to be filled into the pincushion. So what she does is she tears those papers and stuffs them into the pincushion and then stitches up the 4th side, and the pincushion is ready to be presented to the father on his birthday. So Kezia is very happy after that, and she just happily moves around and probably tells her grandmother, "Granny, I have prepared this pincushion, I'm done with it, and probably Papa will be happy when he receives." So while this all is going on, one day, probably the same evening, there is a lot of commotion, a lot of unrest in the house. She is with her grandmother in one of the rooms upstairs, and her father's probably downstairs, and there's a lot of loud noise emanating from the lobby area or the drawing room. And she gets to know that her father's great speech for the Port Authority, that is not to be found anywhere. So, in order to find out, the rooms are searched, the servants are questioned. And finally, mother comes into Kezia's rooms and she asks her if she has seen some papers that had been kept on a table in her room. Kezia says yes. She owns up to her innocent mistake, and the poor little girl, she admits that yes, she had taken the papers and that she had torn them, and then she had stuffed them into her pincushion in order to prepare it properly and then present it to her father on her birthday. Now the poor child is dragged down to the dining room by her mother, where her father is pacing up and down anxiously. And then the mother explains everything to him, and she tells, this is what was done by Kezia. She had torn those papers into small bits and had utilized them for filling up her pincushion. Now, the father asks Kezia if she had done something like that. And she stutters and says yes. She confirms, yes, I have done it. Now, when she is so scared and she stutters a no in a whisper, her father is more angered by it. And he is not in a forgiving mood now. He asks the grandmother to put Kezia to bed that very instant and tells her she is not to be fed and she is just to be made to sleep. And poor Kezia, who's a very small child, she lies alone in her bed and she keeps on crying. Poor thing, she is so frightened by the entire episode that she is not unable to make out what was wrong that she had done. So she feels quite scared of whatever had happened. Now, when she is lying in her bed in the evening and, she's been told to just be there, a little later, her father comes to Kezia's room and he has a ruler in her hand. So, the father says, I want to punish you for unnecessarily taking somebody else's things and making use of those things. And she tells her to pull out her hand, and he starts caning her with that ruler. She screams and tries to hide under the bedclothes, but he pulls her out and orders her to hold out her hands so that she can be taught a lesson not to touch somebody else's things. She tries to reason out with her father that it is for him and for his birthday that she had done something like that, but he does not listen to her and hits her little pink palms with the ruler. Now the beating leaves deep scars on Kezia's mind. From then on, she puts both her hands behind her back whenever she encounters her father, whenever she sees her father coming towards her. One day, Kezia sees her neighbors, the family of her neighbors, the children in the MacDonald family. The family that lived next doors was the McDonald's family. And she sees the children of the McDonald family playing with their father. Now, in her life, she had never ever come across any such episode when her father had played with her. So she found it very strange that the father was very happily playing with the children of the family. The McDonalds in this story are portrayed as an exuberant, lively, playful family. And Kezia looks through the vegetable garden wall and she sees the 5 children playing with their father, turning a hose pipe at him, and the father tickling them rather than scolding them for anything like that. When compared with her own scary father, who never played with Kezia, it seemed that the love between the father and children next door was something extraordinary. And she observes that Mr. MacDonald is a very playful, jolly, liberal, and happy sort of a father compared to her father, who was extremely strict. And now this leads her to draw a conclusion that all fathers are not alike. Fathers may be different. Some may be playful and happy like Mr. MacDonald, and others may be strict and stern and disciplined and assertive, domineering like her own father. Days pass, and one day, when her mother is ill and has to be hospitalized, Kezia's opinion about her father changes drastically. What happens is, grandmother has to accompany Kezia's mother to the hospital, and Kezia is left alone in the house with the cook. And the name of the cook is Alice. Now, daytime is fine, but when Alice puts Kezia to bed at night, the child is terrified to be alone. She is afraid of nightmares. She doesn't want the cook to go away. But the cook has to go back to her home at night. So Kezia is frightened because she thinks that at night she's going to have nightmares, and because her grandmother is not there to take care of her and pacify her when she is in her bed, then she would be really disturbed, perturbed at night. But in spite of that, when she talks to Alice, Alice cautions her. She says, don't scream at night and wake your father up. Don't do that. He would come back home after such hard work, and he might feel, irritated by all this. So even if Kezia feels, scared because of the nightmares, she should not scream out loud. She should not say anything to wake up her father. Now that day, Kezia again has the horrible dream. And the horrible dream is of a butcher. And the butcher is holding a knife in his hand. This was a dream that she used to have time and again. And because of that, she is awakened and she's shivering and crying loudly for her grandmother. However, she sees that her father is standing beside her bed with a candle in his hand. On learning that she is scared because of her terrible dream, her father takes her in his arms and carries her to his room. He tucks her in his bed and makes her sleep close to him. He is so tired that he goes off to sleep earlier than her. Little Kezia looks closely at her father and realizes that he is not the giant that she had thought him to be. He may not pamper her like Mr. MacDonald because he works very hard, rather harder than Mr. MacDonald. So she lays her head on his heart and realizes that he has a big heart full of warmth and care. And here the little girl Kezia sheds all the fear that she has for her father, and she snuggles up to him, and she thinks that probably the father's not that stricter personality that she's been thinking all alone, and now she has loving sort of emotions for her father, and she feels closer to her father than ever. So this was the story of Kezia and the sort of relationship that Kezia had with her father. The story of Kezia actually conveys a lovely message about the kind of bond parents and children have. Now, this bond has the strength to survive every type of challenge. However, in order to prepare the children for their hardships of adult life, parents have to be a little strict towards them and have to punish them so that the children are more responsible, they are more aware of what sort of problems may be encountered by them in the life to come. So the actual motive of the parents when they act strict towards their children is to, make them prepared for the kind of hardships that they might face and how they should deal with them. But sometimes children develop negativity because of this. So this story somehow, conveys a message for the children as well as the parents. Now this story makes us realize that children should trust their parents. Sometimes, when we find that our parents are very strict, we tend to feel that, we can't confide in them, we can't talk to them. And because, if we talk to our parents in such manner, probably, they're going to give us some sort of physical punishment. And they don't realize that the parents sometimes act strict with the children just in order to strengthen them emotionally and probably in all the respects so that, they're able to stand up for themselves, be more responsible in life, and are able to face all the challenges. But for the parents also, there is a message that is conveyed which just tells them that physical punishment can leave emotional scars on the psyche of the child. And this can be to the extent that it can hamper the growth of a balanced personality of a child. So the story somehow teaches here that the responsibility to strengthen the bonding between the child and the parent lies equally with both of them. It's not to be borne only by one person. The parents and the children both are responsible for the strong bond that exists between the two. It should not be very strict. It should not be very harsh. Neither should the children think that an easygoing attitude is good enough. They should try to, learn from the parents' experience, and they should try to abide by the rules and regulations that are set apart for the children, because this is what helps them to excel in life later. That's all for the lesson today. Thank you, children.